Good afternoon. It is Monday, November 13th, and this is a joint meeting of the Education and Culture Committee and the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. And there will be a transition at some point to the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee only. But in this committee, we're going to discuss out-of-school time programming, which is obviously really important issue with everything that our kids are facing. I want to invite, I see we have Ramona Bell Pearson, we have Miss Riley and her team here, Adrian Clutter from Rec, Shane Tate is online. Okay, so we're going to figure that out. We're having some technical difficulties. Some people are trying to get in. Sydney Wilson Hunter and Jennifer Strobel, and then I know Shanae is trying to get in from the Collaboration Council. So we're going to turn in, we have several presentations on what's happening within out-of-school time space and utilization and also programming. But the data is clear that we need more of this with everything our youth are facing right now, so we're going to talk about that. I want to see if my co-chair, Councilmember Friedson, Council Vice President Friedson, has anything to add.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate everybody being here. Obviously, we need to be leaning on out-of-school time and these programs more than ever. Our young people are hurting, and they need our support, and we need to be doing more of this. I will say this, the previous versions of this joint committee have really taken a significant interest in this, have tried to offer as much support as we possibly can. I think that has only grown since we started having these conversations many years ago, and look forward to the conversation today, and also just to see how we can work together to build on what's going well, to change things that aren't going well, and to build the partnerships and the collaboration to the extent that we can. So thank you for all the work. Glad we're doing this, and I'll yield back.
Thank you. Yep, and as I always say, this is my favorite committee because it's in both my committees. So, all right, Ms. Yao, turn it over to you to tee us up. I know we're going to invert the order a little bit here.
Yes. As the Joint Committee knows, there was a request to complete a strategic plan on out-of-school time activities to ensure that all children in our community that need those services get access to them. So there is a work group that's been meeting on how to develop this strategic plan, and the Joint Committee requested an update on how that strategic planning process is going. We have Ramona Bell Pearson from the Office of Community Use of Public Facilities who is going to tee you off. Hopefully we can get Ms. Tate online to do the overview from the Collaboration Council's perspective. But before that, we'll hear a presentation from the Recreation Department and from MCPS.
Wonderful. Ms. Bell Pearson.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to give an update to the joint committees. I would like to start by maybe giving you a tiny bit of background because I think it looked a little different when we were here earlier. I wanted to let you know that we began working with Collaboration Council and several departments in the county during COVID to actively try to stand up any type of activities for students. At the time, MCPS was closed, as was pretty much everything else. We were in a position as the Community Use of Public Facilities of losing 85 to 90% of our real estate. So we couldn't really even assist with having, facilitating programming. And so we began to work even closer with the vendors that are on the rec list and through Collaboration Council and through some other divisions. We worked with Positive Youth Development to understand what we could provide. We did have fields. We did have the opportunity for outdoor assemblies for them to do sports and different types of events. We converted basketball courts into meeting areas because they were open air. We did all of these things, and we did it largely with funding that was through federal funding and some state funding that was emergency funding for COVID. What we saw was vendors who were more than willing to serve their communities, in particular Title I or focus neighborhoods where we had not been able to stand up a lot of things pre-COVID. We were finding that there was a renewed interest and the community was coming together and wanting these events. I'm sure they had wanted them all along, but we hadn't been able to focus on that. In our efforts through federal funding and state funding, we were able to expand programming, but I began a conversation with Ms. Tate, in fact, about how are we going to sustain this? Because we knew as soon as COVID was over and as soon as we were back to whatever business as usual means, we were going to be running into a situation where we didn't have the funding and we would go back to the usual programming and opportunities that we saw. So we started talking to the vendors. We started saying, what do you need? We indicated, we heard a strong indication from them that they needed support, not only financial, but they needed access, they needed training, they needed to know that there was going to be something sustained for them to be, to participate in. So we began to work with MCPS very closely. They were very interested in out-of-school time and making a quality program that would allow students to have not only the opportunity for access and activities to do, but a well-rounded opportunity that would include transportation and food sources as well as quality programming for them. They were partnering also with vendors, and we started the out-of-school time, which was a work group that consisted of childcare providers. It consisted of vendors in the community that do sports, different activities. It consisted of Collaboration Council, the various county agencies like Recreation, HHS. We had a whole group, a litany of groups, and we all began to work very closely. And Kids Day Out started with largely based on Recreation standing things up. We also had cooperation and partnership with the Board of Education, which entrusted their funding to build an office of out-of-school time, which Jennifer Strobel is the coordinator, director, I'm not sure, coordinator, and she has been fabulous in working with us. As you know, community use of public facilities does not do programming. We facilitate permitting for facilities, but as part of our facilitation, we do sort of like a quasi event planning where we have to educate people and facilitate their use of the facilities in the correct way. So if you want a facility and you're thinking of a large event, but it's a small area, we're going to have to direct you as to how you can do that someplace else or some other way you can do it. So that extent, we've got a lot of experience with programming, what's available, what's appropriate, what the community likes, what will work where. So we began to use that knowledge to work with MCPS in developing their out-of-school time activities and working with Recreation to understand what they usually stand up and where they usually operate so that we could understand where the deserts were, because in working with HHS, they had done mapping, which we took advantage of and used. We also were aware that through the Early Childhood Education Initiative, they had done mapping about daycare services and facilities, and so we used that information. The Positive Youth Development through Behavioral Health at HHS had done mapping, so we used that information. So we've been culminating information from the various agencies and entities that are collecting information in an attempt not to overburden our communities and once again go back to the well and say, what do you need, what do you want, what's going on? They're very clear about what they need and want. We need to hear them, and that's what we really realized as we were going through this. And so we're culminating our information. We are planning to come up with a strategic plan that will not just look at out-of-school time and Kids Day Out and half days and non-instructional days and after school and weekends and evenings, which is all boiled up into our definition for out-of-school time. But we were also going to look at how we could sustain that for the vendors and the parents so there'd be a reliability and that they could count on having these programmings and these resources available to them. So to that extent, we started meeting, and we've been meeting probably for about 9 months now as the group that we are now. And that group, as I said, consists of various county agencies. We're now pulling in the private because the private sector is very much a player. We are not only looking at kindergarten through 5th or 6th grade or through middle school, we're looking at high schoolers too because they need career preparation. They need to be addressed too. When we were in COVID, we saw that situations like, for example, the Civic Building, which is a building that we manage, there was a lot of traffic with skateboarders. And it was not always consistent or supportive of the foot traffic and the other people who wanted to use those facilities. And rather than push them away, we started trying to look for ways to program so that they would be able to be productive and safe in that environment. So that's an example of how we worked with Impact Silver Spring and with the Latin American Youth Organization and some other organizations, HHS, and they came to the plaza and started helping us with programming on certain days when we knew there was higher traffic for skateboarders. Those are the kind of things we're doing now as a precursor to a more strategic plan. But I wanted you to know that we are doing things now. We are very excited about what we're doing. We have a great partnership with MCPS. Their Office of Out of School Time has been very valuable to us. They have also worked very closely with Recreation, who's another partner that's been very valuable to us. So we have been really trying to put things in place that can then be expanded upon once we actually get the strategic plan. We have the ask, we have a structure, and you understand where we're going. The final thing I guess I'll say, unless you have more questions of me, is to point out that the private sector is something we, even in the early childhood initiative, are looking at to see how they could be more resourceful. There's real estate that is not being used that could be used for child care facilities potentially. We don't actually have the legislative structure to do that, so there may be a need to look at that in addition to looking at funding and how we pull them in and partner with them in a way that isn't a conflict of interest and doesn't violate any of our county regulations or laws. But in our group, we're looking at the private sector like the Community Foundation, where I have an appointment with the Economic Development Corporation, because in order to sell our community, they have to understand and be a partner with what's going on and what resources and assets are in our community. And we have WorkSource Montgomery on our work group, and they're working with us, especially related to older children and the families and what opportunities exist. So I just wanted to highlight those things for you to let you know that while we're developing this strategy, we are still doing outreach and we are still trying to get to a point where we have the right connections with enough of the community, whether it's public, private, family, school, etc. And the goal is to make sure that everybody's at the table. I'm not sure that all of the communities have been, because they haven't either known that resources were available, or they've been so busy trying to live their lives in their communities and get by day to day that they aren't aware what other options might exist. So what we're going to do is have cafes to open it up to talk to them, to find out what assets they're interested in, what resources might be better for them. So I'll leave it at that. I guess I would say one more thing, though. I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to, but I am. I look across at Ms. Strobel, and I realize that her office is one with MCPS that is here only until the funding goes away. And I'm very concerned because it's been very valuable to have her. She has vendors, like a group of like 40 vendors that she can use if we need to stand up an out-of-school activity, if we need to go to her for support for where's the best community to do this. She has those connections. She has para-educators that can go out and help us if we need supervisors or chaperones or things. The fact that she's operating under a 21st Century grant and, am I saying this right, ESSER, which is the elementaries? I'm sorry. We've been working together so long, we know each other's stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I really hope that the message is clear that we need to continue this out-of-school time office, because it's been very valuable to us in being able to put forth what we've done. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and we'll go, I guess, to MCPS next, or Rec. Do you want to go to Rec next? You have Rec teed up. So before we do that, I just want to say at the top, you know, if you could address this in your presentation, and then we'll come back. You know, Ms. Yao put a discussion question here about timeline. And it's something you all know, we've been here before. Every time we have this conversation, I have deja vu about how long this strategic planning process is going to take, when we're going to have a plan we can invest in. I mean, it's literally been years, and obviously we had COVID. When I read this over the weekend, I saw that we're saying maybe not quite yet. It's going to take a little while longer to get to the recommendations, but we really wanted, I know when we talked to previous committees, joint committees, we had talked about having something to be able to act on in this year's budget. So I'm hopeful that even if we're not all the way there, I think the point you brought up about the out-of-school time office, that's something we're going to have to make a decision on in this budget, is one of the things that's kind of phasing out. So I would just ask that you keep that in mind, because I know I'm eager. I think other colleagues are eager to have a robust plan that we can invest in. Our kids need it. Our families need it. We've been having a lot of cross-cutting conversations about the need. We just had a conversation this morning about truancy and absenteeism, which is obviously connected to out-of-school time activities. We talked about our 3rd and 5th graders and the student achievement. There's a lot of things that are tied into this, of why kids get up and go to school and why they are doing well or not. So just really want to please emphasize the timing approach to this in your presentations. Ms. Clutter.
Thank you very much. Adrian Clutter, Recreation. I just want to start off by thanking our partners. We couldn't do this alone. Community use of public facilities, Collaboration Council, Montgomery County Public Schools has really been instrumental. And because I'm afraid I'll forget to say this, I just want to start off by mentioning the success of Kids Day Out, where we've had more than 3,000 kids enrolled to date, and then we have another 3,000 plus already enrolled for the remainder of the dates during the school year. And one of the things that's really important, our partnership with Montgomery County Public Schools has really opened the door for accessibility. They've covered the cost of all the admissions for each student to participate in that program. So, and I'll get to that in a minute when I talk a little bit more about cost recovery. But I do have a fear that funding goes away because families have been able to enjoy that program at no cost thanks to the partnership of MCPS. And additionally, that program's been wonderful because we overlap that program with programs such as TeenWorks, our youth employment program. So young people are employed during those days as well to support that program. And so it's been a really wonderful experience. But as everybody knows, I love talking about recreation. I love what we're doing. And I know that I'm giving a recap a little bit about what our summer looked like and what our school year plans look like as we continue to build the ship as we go along, make it better, put the improvements in, and the strategic planning process is really lended nicely to that. Where we're looking at, you'll hear some of the areas that we're looking at: quality, accessibility, equity, and sustainability, which really threads nicely into the mission of the Recreation Department. And we know that when we put kids in the right place with the right people doing the right things at the right time, we really yield great results. And we have had studies done by the Office of Shared Accountability from MCPS for programs like EBB, which are long-term sustainable best practices, that shows that we do improve things like school connectedness and academic achievement. And so we're happy to be growing into 2 new schools this year for EBB Elementary School, Harriet Tubman and George and Forest. I believe those are the two locations, and they will be starting off in January. So we're excited about that. Principals are asking about Excel Beyond the Bell and how they get programs like that in the school. Next slide. And as we go into the next slide, we'll talk about equity and community resilience. One of the things that I think it's important to mention here is, because this will be a big part of the accessibility when we discuss strategic planning, but in recreation, programs and services are heavily subsidized in more than one way. And we don't often talk about it. We talk about our Rec Assist program, which is generally understood as being like a scholarship opportunity for families, which is really, really important. But overall, our indirect costs are largely subsidized across recreation. We do have a revenue mark as a department, so what we like to call is cost recovery, where we are required to recover some costs for in terms of user fees for programs and such as I mentioned Kids Day Out, where they help us recover some of those costs by paying for the kids' admission so that they can attend at no cost. We also offer price differential. One of the things that we've done over the course of, I'd say, the last couple of years coming out of COVID, but lower the fees of programs such as our sports leagues, our basketball programs, so that they are more affordable. And then also we offer a wide range of, community benefits, such as, I really need to mention our Free in 23 program here today, because while it's not specifically a youth program, when we talk about accessibility for families, and the thing that I'm most proud about that program in recreation is we finally put the mission in front of the revenue, where before we felt like the revenue sort of dictated what we did, and with the support of the executive branch and council, we were able to forego the revenue that we would have collected from memberships to community centers and allow families to come for free. So now families have access to things like gym memberships that maybe improve health. So while a kid is playing open gym or coming to another program, a parent could potentially be working out in our weight room. But when we have this creative shift in thinking, and I think that's one of the things that is important to mention, that we before, recreation services would often get stereotyped with private sector. Oh, it's very transactional, or you have to operate like a business, which is true when it comes to fiscal responsibility. But in this case, where we let the mission drive it, we've seen enrollments go up 41% in our department. And we didn't skip a beat. And this is really so important, because now mission are driving that cost recovery, and we're seeing more families access our facilities. And it's just another way that the county, that I'm so grateful to be a part of, has allowed us to make accessibility a part of what we do in recreation. And so we've seen we're building social capital. We're able to tackle huge community issues like reduce food insecurity. When kids come to programs like Kids Day Out, they're getting a hot meal. We're able to connect more families to community services. And it's just been really great. Next slide. One of the things that I think that we often overlook, recreation often brings a smile to everybody's face. And while it is fun, we also, we are tackling emotional health, physical health, making sure that, kids are learning, doing experiential learning, that we're setting up positive environments, and that we do have an economic impact on our community. Next slide. So we serve just about over 16,000, and I'll say I suspect this is going to grow even greater as we continue to recover from COVID. A little over 16,000 kids in out of school time, and this is basically capturing last year's fiscal year to give an overall look, serving over 130,000 meals during that time in partnership with MCPS. We train our staff in food and nutrition services to do that work. We have over 1,800 youth employees, which I really like the fact that young people can come be employed with us. Largely, we're the leading employer for youth in the county. And traditionally, park and recreation agencies are naturally, but we also have a wonderful workforce development program called TeenWorks. And that program is so important and near and dear to my heart, because kids at that point don't have to choose between going and having a job and missing on the developmental assets that they get in our program. It's kind of a cool way that they get both. So they're in the positive place. We're teaching them employability skills that they can then transfer anywhere, and then they also get to be a positive part of the community programs and services that we're doing. And we've had over 8,600 hours of family engagement. It's notable to mention that programs like Excel Beyond the Bell, where we've had 100% family engagement at almost all of our EBB elementary schools. It's unheard of. And some of the really intentional aspects of that program, where parents who have to commit hours of service in lieu of paying a fee for that program get service credit for going to their PTAs, for coming to participate in family engagement. And we've seen families be more active in their school environment. And so that's been another really great outcome of that program. Again, we've just seen students on our Excel Beyond the Bell program achieve great results in their test scores and their school connectedness. And this is done by statistically valid studies conducted by the Office of Shared Accountability from Montgomery County Public Schools. Next slide. This year in summer camp, we served nearly 16,000 young people in programs like we've had summer camp, Camp Rec, which was a program where we partnered again with MCPS. They were extremely instrumental in that, so we could offer parents a full day of programming wrapped around the summer school day. So it really was a not only an experiential learning opportunity, but served a big childcare need. We had our traditional summer fun center programs, highly subsidized summer camp programs for 6 weeks, fun food fitness, which brought physical activity and hot meals to outreach communities in Germantown, such as the mobile home park, and partnered with the libraries to do that program there as well. We offered therapeutic recreation camps and inclusion programs. Our inclusion programs and services are really growing, where families with disabilities can sign their kids up for a camp program and request one-on-one companions if needed, to allow students to be able to attend traditional summer camp opportunities. We have teen camp opportunities. Summer swim lessons continue to be huge, as well as junior counselors. And again, we offered Teens Day Out in the summer for drop-in, and we sold out that program. So teens would go on special events and trips with us throughout the summer. Our economic impact of summer, I think this is really pretty impressive when you think about it. When you think about all the different levels of subsidies and the partnerships, and we have an impact of greater than $5 million. And that means money that families don't have to come out of pocket for, so they can spend on other things, whether it's contributing to household or food or things that they need. The impact of summer is so great in this community. Again, it's certainly notable, something makes you really proud to be a resident of this community. And so when we talk about building social capital, we can really see it here financially, where recreation and along with our partners have been able to do that. Next slide. Youth sports is something that we've been focusing on, particular equity in youth sports. We've got over 9,000 kids registered in our youth sports program. We've really been emphasizing programs to get more young girls involved in youth sports. So we've grown programs such as our volleyball program, swimming programs, and we continue to grow in that area. And I can't wait soon to report out on the success of our youth sports committee, because I'm super impressed with the group that we have, and I know that they're going to be anxious to talk about what they've got going on as well. Next slide. Oh, I think that's it. Is it? Yep, that is the end. And anyhow, I mean, I'd just like to close by saying thank you again to our partners. We certainly can't do this alone. And this is simply just a snapshot of what we've got going on, why we're looking at areas of how do we even be more sustainable, how do we continue to improve quality, accessibility, and equity in our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we love that you're fired up about rec, because we are too. We'll go to MCPS.
Hello, my name is Jen Strobel. I'm the out-of-school time coordinator. I appreciate that Ramona gave me a promotion to a director, but I am a coordinator. And today I'm going to talk to you about the status of out-of-school time in Montgomery County Public Schools and where we're going. Can we have the slides? Oh, can they see the slides? Oh, thank you. Okay, so Montgomery County Public Schools is committed to offering high-quality out-of-school time programming. And our mission is to make sure that we offer programming that is safe and engaging and aligned to the pathway to the college career community readiness. And the most importantly is that the opportunities are at no cost to families, so they're accessible to all students. These programs are going to be offered or are being offered on the non-instructional days, on Saturdays, and after school. So I'll talk to you a little bit about each of the programs. Shanae will be talking a lot about the strategic planning that we are doing, but I will say that through the partnerships that we've gotten from working together as a team, we really feel like we have a bank of resources. And I think that that's almost as important as a strategic plan, because we can share with each other. So it's often that I'll turn to Ramona and ask her a question, or Shanae, I said to her, oh, I need a tool, and she sent me a folder of tools. So the fact that we're all using the same tools and documents and we have each other to rely on is monumental. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the funding sources for how these programs are funded. There are three, and It's 21st century, and there are many 21st century programs in Montgomery County Public Schools, but I only have 2 grants for 21st century programs. Those two current programs offer high dosage learning support, art, soccer, positive youth development, and family engagement. Now, in the future, I could write more 21st century grants so that we could probably get some more funding to, complement the fact that we don't have a true sustainability plan, but we could work around it by seeking more grant funding through 21st century. My position is on the Maryland Leads Reimagining the Use of Time, and that grant is funding the after-school programs that I'll talk about in just a moment. There's also ESSER funding, which is funding the Teens Day and the Kids Day Out, and then a lot of other additional programming that is going on the non-instructional days. Program quality and evaluation is a huge aspect of ensuring that out-of-school time works in Montgomery County Public Schools. It's not just about putting programs in, but it's ensuring that they are high quality and good for our kids. So what we did was we went and hit the streets to talk to families, students, and educators and get stakeholder feedback. You can see some of the groups that we spoke to really find out, what do you want to do on your day off? What do you want to do after school that you can't do now? What do you need? The most interesting groups of people that I spoke with were the students. The students had a lot of very strong opinions. Everybody had strong opinions. The students had the most strong opinions about what they wanted to do, particularly on a day off. So the students shared with me that they wanted, the high school students shared that they wanted access to test prep. They wanted to be able to ensure that they all could have direct access to that. So one of the things that will be starting in December is every high school will have SAT prep after school at no cost with the book, the College Board book. So that's huge. That's something that schools couldn't guarantee and give away in the past, but our students will have the opportunity to stay after school and have test prep. Additionally, at the elementary school, the parents overwhelmingly felt that art programs were expensive, so you'll see that there are a lot of art programs after school at no cost at the elementary level to fill that gap. Next slide. Okay. So data is really important to us. We are taking data after every one of the non-instructional days and periodically during the after-school programming. So the students do a quality survey, the parents do a quality survey, and I'm taking stakeholder visit data by going in and visiting the vendors, and I'm giving them feedback on what I see. I have a tool that the Collaboration Council created, and sometimes it doesn't feel so good to get feedback. But that's the only way that we can ensure success, is by being honest with the vendors and being honest about what we need in the programs and making sure that they live up to the expectations. There will be an impact report in the spring with all of the data, but I'll talk a little bit today about what I have so far. This is just from the non-instructional days and the Kids Day Out. You can see that there was overwhelmingly a lot of parents, families, guardians, kids, and teens that said that it was either good or great. I want to take a minute to explain a little bit about what we've done for the non-instructional days and give you some highlights of what to expect. So on all of the non-instructional days, students can have a variety of opportunities, such as going to Kid Museum, Imagination Stage, Boys and Girls Club, obviously our rec department. We have hockey clinics, and lots of arts. But there's also centrally led activities that I partner with different offices and central office to make large events. So I'm going to tell you about the ones that have already happened, but as a teaser of what's to come ahead, we have a STEAM fair coming up, a Grow Your Own event, a Special Olympics for preschool, a Junior Day to prepare for college, an Arts Day, and an Earth Day. And they're going to be really huge, so I hope you'll come. The events that happen on all of the non-instructional days, those, we pass out the flyers first to community schools and Title I schools, and then 2 weeks later we open up the flyers to the public, to the MCPS public, just to give some students a quicker opportunity to get a hold of those spots. Here you can see a really successful day. I'm really proud of this. This was a Student Environmental Volunteer Day. This was done, it's aligned with the Sustainability Plan in partnership with the Division of Sustainability and Compliance. Over 300 high school students signed up the day after Halloween to plant trees and beautify Gaithersburg High School. That is incredible for our high school students to want to do it. I closed registration and I got so many emails that weekend I had to reopen the registration because they were begging me if they could get in. It was a bitter cold day. It was windy and freezing cold. And the survey data, the students said, it filled my bucket. They said, I made a new friend. And they said, I had a lot of fun planting different kinds of plants. And overall, I would say that that was the quintessential point of out of school time. The students earned 6 SSL hours and they learned a ton. But that's not the only activity that we had on that day. You can see here we have the Washington Capitals launched a youth hockey program. 86 students went to Kingsview Middle School. They got a lesson, a hockey stick, a puck, and more. And then these students over here, they learned about STEAM at Kid Museum. 100 students came. Students get transportation and lunch. So there shouldn't be a barrier to attendance. The students on the one picture over here, it was Board Testimony Day. Students learned how to identify a priority. They were coached by community members in the Board of Education, and their voice was elevated. They each wrote and presented their testimony to the Board of Education for Remembrance and Reconciliation Month. And then on the picture with this shirt, with the red shirts, that's when I went to Kids Day Out, and I saw that students, our MCPS students, were employed at the rec department that I was visiting. And I was so impressed by their leadership. They gave me a tour of the facility and they explained what the students were doing. And it's really a double bang for the buck because these students are getting paid, they're getting leadership skills, and they're role models to the students that are in attendance that are also MCPS students. Honestly, they were more impressive than some of the vendors I've hired. This is some data from just from the 2 Kids Day Outs, from the overall non-instructional days. For the initial programming, the parents gave me some race data. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about the after-school programming. After-school programming serves a variety of needs. We have positive youth development, science, arts, academics, and athletics. The schools that are receiving an after-school program were selected strategically. So first, we looked at what rec department had to see where there were already programs. Then we reached out to principals and we, as Ramona calls them, deserts. We looked for the deserts, the places where there was no programming or little programming. And then we worked with the community schools coordinator to find out which schools had the smallest budgets for out-of-school time. 79% of the schools that are receiving the out-of-school time programming right now are Title I, and 71% are community schools. So in total, we partner with about 40 vendors to provide after-school programming. Those vendors were selected through the request for proposal process. The vendors, the team that selected them were students, staff, and community members. We're launching a program right now where para-educators get to lead after-school programming in the schools. I don't have a lot to share at this time with you, but I know it's going to be great because our para-educators have the opportunity to showcase their skills and their talents and build relationships with the students in the schools that they work at. So we're really excited about that. But all in all, I'm just so appreciative for the opportunity to share what's going on in Montgomery County Public Schools with out of school time. And if you ever want to join me on a quality visit, consider yourself invited. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we still waiting? We can go into questions and then
I think
transition back.
that's Shanae. I just got a text that said she's 2 minutes out and she has her kids with her.
No, I
so.
understand.
Okay.
Speaking of out-of-school time help. So why don't we start, I just have one question, then I'll turn to colleagues. And so if you just text me, I know I have 2 already, and I'll turn to co-chair first. That question that was brought up by Ms. Bell Pearson, I didn't hear you directly address because I know it's not your role to address it, but I see we have other MCPS staff here. Like, that position can't go away, right? That work can't stop, in my view. So what are we thinking right now from the MCPS standpoint? Obviously, Rec's going to continue knocking it out of the park, literally and figuratively, and I know you always answer the call, but that coordination, the partnership on the planning, the development of the strategic plan, your position ends at the end of this fiscal year? And do you have any other staff that work with you? It's just you coordinating? Okay. So if we could talk to MCPS about, just answer that question. It's one of the questions in the packet. I think it's important to this conversation.
Sure, thank you. Peggy Pugh, Chief Academic Officer. And I have to say, the Office of One has done amazing, incredible work, both navigating bureaucracies in and out of the system to create great opportunities for kids. We see that this is a valuable partnership. It's not something we want to see go away, and so we're asking that it be continue to be considered as we're right now going through our budget process to advise the superintendent. So we do see it as a priority.
Got it. Okay, well, that's good to know. Obviously, there's steps in that process, but good to know that's the first step, is you saying we need it and we want it. I'll turn to Councilman Friedson and then to my colleagues.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for all the work and the presentations. I want to kind of pick up where my co-chair started in many ways, and really focus on what's next. I mean, we had really talked about previously, how do we transition from where we are and what we're doing to what we want to consistently do? And we've, always been trying to kind of catch the tail of the dog, so to speak, and we're chasing a bit. And I think at a certain point, we've got to take a step back and say, okay, what is this long-term going to look like in terms of institutionalizing some of the benefits? Now, one thing that has been discussed is the temporary funding for a particular office and position within MCPS, and how we make that not a temporary but a permanent. So that's one takeaway. But what are the other takeaways? What is this going to cost? What is the scale we think we can achieve? What is the time in which we think it's achievable? What's the structure that we need to set up? Are we set up today to do this permanently, to fund it at the level that we're going to need to fund it? How many kids are we going to reach? How many kids do we think we need to reach? I'd love to think through that. I have no doubt that the programs are working, and the kids who are involved in them and participating in them are benefiting, right? That we're filling their cup, so to speak. I mean, the question is, how many cups are there to fill, and are we reaching them? And if we're not, which I think we all can agree we're not reaching all the people we want to reach and would like to reach, what does that look like? And I'm sure some of that is a funding question, but I think some of it is more than that. So I'd like to hear thoughts on that.
I'll give it a start.
Sure.
We actually have another aspect to our presentation, which was Collaboration Council's portion, which was going to address some of those issues, but I can give you an overview of what Shanae will have when she comes. And I also will invite Sydney Wilson-Hunter, who is the coordinator for the out-of-school time. OST Program Director. I get everybody's title wrong, I'm sorry. I'll invite her to speak too after I do. What I have been asking the group to do as the co-chair is to be cognizant of our budget season, and to understand that we came to you in April and we said we were going to start working on the strategic plan with a goal towards having a plan to recommend by the end of the fiscal year, which is June. That doesn't coincide, I know, with the budget season, because the budget goes to bed in March, and you need to have information that will give you information to inform on how to do this. What we stepped back and started looking at then was, can we come up with some staged planning that would allow us to implement the strategic plan in steps or stages, which we could give you a report in February about a first stage, which would include some appropriation ideas or suggestions, would include the numbers and information as to how we would focus on certain parts of the community or certain regions of the county in order to be able to start implementation. As far as a full strategic plan, I don't think we're going to be ready until in FY25. But I am pushing for us to be at a point by February that we would be able to give you information that we could then make part of a recommendation for appropriation or an ask for appropriation. And bear in mind, all of this is being worked with through the county executive's office. So we'll be coming based on when he says and what he says we can do. But that's our objective right now. We've been keeping them up to date and working closely with them.
Yes, I just want to follow up on that question. So is the intention, if that's going to be completed in February, is the expectation that then the executive would include in his budget
I'm not quite sure how it's going to go.
the funding?
I mean,
Yeah, I just
the
want to
executive's
avoid.
in support of this,
Yeah,
I will say
yeah,
that. And,
yeah.
and I would assume that that's what would happen, but I can't speak.
Yeah, I've seen this movie and I've watched how it ends, and I want to
We all
avoid the situation where the county executive is supportive, but doesn't include it in his budget, which, is a different story. And then the council is then faced with the question of, well, the executive is supportive, but it's up to you to figure out how to fund it, which is not included in a budget, which means we have to cut from something else that the county executive supports. So my urging here, since we have some executive branch colleagues here, and I understand that much of this is beyond your span of control, respectfully, and I understand that. But I know if you had your druthers, it would all be funded, and it would have been funded yesterday or last week or last year or last decade. But I want to avoid that because I'd rather this not be, a confrontation that we have to grapple with at the budget. It's been a collaborative approach up to this point, and sometimes these things that are collaborative end up being confrontational because the timing doesn't align.
Right.
So let's work really, really hard to commit to one another that the recommendation is going to be ready for this budget, and the executive will include in the budget what the executive supports for the council's consideration. That's my expectation. I think that's generally been the council's expectation. I don't want to speak for others, but that has generally been what this joint committee has talked about. And I just want to make sure that we don't lose that and then end up with a situation on March 15th where these issues that we all care about, and I believe the county executive and the executive branch certainly cares about, but it's not included in the budget, and then we're left facing the tough choices that result. So I'm getting nodding from the Department of Recreation here, and appreciate that. Are there any other thoughts here on this aspect?
Not necessarily related to the budget, but one of the things that I really appreciate about the planning process, which is different, and I think it's taking a little bit more time to do it this way. A lot of times we plan with the community in mind, but we don't include the community in the planning. And so I think that the Collaboration Council has been really instrumental in reaching out to community partners and making sure the community is sitting at the table when we look at the areas. The other thing that I think it's important to note, which is really good, is we realize as we get into the planning process of this and looking at what our strategies are going to be, that we have a tremendous amount of foundational work that had been done prior years that is not lost. And as a matter of fact, we're dusting it off. We have great relationships with the Maryland Out of School Time Network, and we're looking at some of the sustainability plans that help drive programs like Excel Beyond the Bell. And how can we take some of those best practices and relaunch them, look at 3 areas, our systems level, our program level, and then our individual outcomes level, and do what's best for the community in those 3 buckets. And I believe, so what a good segue for Shanae, who is now here with us, and she's done a really wonderful job. And so I'll just go ahead and turn it over to her because she can speak about this so much better than I can.
No, thank you. And you got to turn your mic on, but as you're doing that, I know you have a presentation. The question has been and continues to be, where are we in the process? How do we get something before us that we can act on, that we've been asking for, and that can be consistent with the budget timeline?
Exactly. And let me just add one follow-up, because that was going to be my next question. I'll just put it out now and then turn it over to you and hand it off. But how much of this do we foresee as being county government programs, and how much of this do we foresee as being partnerships and other outside forces, Identity and other organizations that are doing some of these work. I know that the Collaboration Council has been central to that. We just heard that entree, but if you could speak to that a little bit too, and how are we engaging them as part of this process as well? I think to some other conversations that we're having with county government, the school system, and outside partners, and what dynamics we have there, and how do we bring everybody together to actually address the issue. So if you could just speak to a little bit about how you envision that as part of the process as well,
Yeah.
that would be great, and I will turn it back.
Thank you, Sinead Tate. I am the contractor with Collaboration Council that is leading the strategic planning facilitation, and that is a great segue, and that is exactly where we are in the process. We are engaging these community level leaders, these organizations that are currently serving communities as a part of the strategic planning process. They are a part of our priority action committee, so they are sitting and with us looking at different models of sustainability that speak to public-private partnerships, as well as blending and braiding funding across agencies to increase our out-of-school time resources. So that's what we're learning about and level setting across all of the partners, because our agency partners and participants have one level of understanding around out-of-school time funding, and our community members have another. So we really want to make sure that everyone has an even understanding of what's available, what are the trends across the nation, what are some of the funding sources, and strategies that are being used across the nation as well that we can learn from here in Montgomery County. Now, we do expect to have early recommendations around governance structure and sustainability strategies in early February. We do want to make sure Adrian hit on what has been a high value for the committee and for the work group as well that we've been working on, and that is that community-led, community co-designed effort. We did not want to build another system that has not taken into account all of the communities that have been left out that we saw in the 2019 report from OLO. And those communities that we've engaged well, we want to continue working with our agency partners to continue to expand to the breadth of need that still hasn't been met. We're talking about Title I families that were really highlighted in their report that needed supports. Thank you. I just ran here. But we're also talking about our English learners. We're also talking about our students with disabilities that have not been served well with our existing resources to the level that they feel like they've been engaged and participate at an equal level. So we really want to get to those communities and bring the recommendations that are coming to the advisory group from our priority action committees and have them vet them. Are we in the right spaces? Do we have the right facilities to serve you? Are we in the right communities? Do we have partnerships in transportation that allow you to take advantage of what we're suggesting? And if not, how do we engage those other partners, food, transportation, facilities in a different way, specifically private facilities, that might give us the equitable system that we haven't had before?
Thank you very, very much. I know you sent something in the packet, but I'm thinking since where we are now, do you just want to kind of ask questions, incorporate your response, or do you want to present a few minutes on your presentation? I defer to you.
Okay, sure. I can start and just kind of walk you through. This is kind of an update and a progress report of what the work has looked like since April.
Maybe an abridged version, because we do have to.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of it, but
Thank you.
what has really launched since April has been community engagement. And Collaboration Council set out to talk to 600 families, Black and Brown, across communities in the county about what the existing needs and or barriers are, just because our last report was 2019 and new things have happened to keep people from accessing what has been expanded even by our partners. So with that, we do know that we need to still get to communities of students with disabilities and English learners. So we're going about community convenings in partnership with our work group participants. That includes our public and our private partners that are going to work with us between now and January to engage families that represent those needs and those communities in particular. From there, our priority action committees are going to have early recommendations based on strategies that have been evidence-based and best practices to address some of the areas that our families and our communities surface for us. And then work with OLO and OMB to think about what are the budget implications for each of the agencies that participate, because we really want to take an approach where the first recommendations come to our existing partners because they have so many areas where they can expand, We do want to think about what their strategies are. Some of our partners are new to having OST offices, like our MCPS partners, and what might that look like on a strategy on the agency level, in addition to what a countywide strategy looks like. So we want to go with our existing partnerships, give recommendations on strategies that the agencies can support the county with expansion of existing OST, as well as what it would take to have a sustainable governance and equitable system, as well as a quality system to govern all of the work.
Thank you so much. That's exciting. You know, we just finished talking about our early childhood system. This needs that same type of approach to get the programs to everybody equitably. Right. I'll put words in my co-chair's mouth. We want every child that needs out of school time programming to have access to the appropriate level at a cost or no cost, that they can afford. So, I mean, it's going to take a while to get there, but we got to have a plan to get there. So, exactly. All right, let me turn to colleagues. I'm going to go to Councilmember Alvarez, then Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, and then Councilmember Lukey, and then Councilmember Mink, in that order.
Thank you. Major bonus points for coming in person.
Yeah.
You must have been through a lot of stress in the last 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So, and with kids too, my goodness. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you all so much for this continued work. I'm always energized and am so appreciative of everything that you all are doing. I think it is wonderful that we have a principal contact within MCPS. It is something we've wanted for a long time, because it had been added to the job description of some of your predecessors, in addition to the thousands of other things that they do. So I get the importance of the coordination at the central office level, which is, I know really important. We all obviously are going to have to go through really tough budget decisions. We do every year. This will be another year of having to go through especially difficult ones. I associate myself with the comments of both chairs in acknowledging this is a priority. And, if we have to be creative and look at reclassifying positions that may be vacant, we have done this before. We can do it again. And so we need to keep this work going. With that as context, the support from the central office has never really been a problem. There has been goodwill and really strong interest. The challenge has been at the school level. When you work closely with the principal and you work really hard to establish relationships and trust and find space within a school, competing with all of the other myriad of needs, you recruit kids, it's all working, and then the principal leaves, and you got to start all over again. And sometimes, our administrators have so much on their plate, sometimes I just don't know how they do it. But there are some that sometimes view out of school time programs as like another thing they have to worry about, on top of everything else they have to worry about. And some view it as the asset that it is. So what are we doing from the coordination of the central office's perspective and ensuring that we institutionalize that for future administrators at schools? And it may be part of the strategic plan, so we can hold off, but I just want to make sure that that is addressed, because otherwise this work will be for naught. Yes.
Yeah, so in response to that, some of it is really about giving the principals some voice in the decision and some choice making. So when they feel that the program is important to their students, they're more invested. When I first started, I was sort of just trying to plop and run, and I realized right away on day 2 that was not going to work. So many of these are community schools, and the community school liaison is desperate for more and more after-school programming for their students. So with the community liaison and the principal on board, you're sort of set up for success as long as you have the allowance of letting them have some choice in the programming.
Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then related to that, the information and data sharing, which I know is complicated. We've figured out a way to get that data on the macro level. But we're in a crisis right now with the number of third graders, fourth graders, and fifth graders not reading on grade level. The truancy rates that we received a report on this morning are through the roof. And while they are improving, they are still at really historically high levels. And so we have to get very creative with our all hands on the deck approach. So will part of the strategic plan include the definition of an MOU to help with some of that data sharing, acknowledging it's never going to be perfect, but we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good here?
Yes, and we've had early conversations, Jennifer and I, talking about what that might need to look like as we bring that information around, kind of what are the restrictions and/or limitations of data sharing currently, and where might we be able to get creative and kind of expand that for this new system, and how do we bring that to the quality priority action group so they understand for each of our participating agencies what they will need to design as far as MOU and/or quality system for sharing and recommend. So that we can kind of bring some of those barriers down without jeopardizing student privacy and data.
Did you want to add?
Exactly, and the fact that CPS protects student data is actually to our students' benefit, and so that's why Shanae and I have been talking about what that MOU might look like. It will have to be a day before we actually need to start looking at it, because it's going to take a really long time, but it's actually for the good of our students that we protect their data.
Yeah, but it's also for the good of our students to make sure that they have all the support that they need. And so I think, working through that bureaucracy is going to be critical because we're in a crisis right now. So we have to be able to plow full speed ahead and with the support of parents every step of the way clearly. But we have to get out of this, in school, out of school. It's all got to be one unit because we're impacting the same level of students. And it will help with their learning to be able to, for the out-of-school time providers and our youth workers, to better understand what their needs are and vice versa, so that there's more coordination with our teachers and administrators and the youth workers. Last 2 points, because I know we're running behind, are the issue of space. Obviously, it's never going to be perfect. But I do think that we need to get more creative than we have been in identifying space, not just within schools, which is ideal, it's the best case scenario, but we also don't want to displace other really fantastic programs to put in other fantastic programs. And so I think that DGS did this a long time ago, but I think we need to dust off the old playbook and look at the assets from a facility standpoint that are both operated by the county and in some cases not operated by the county, to see what we can do there to maximize the use of space to actually be able to carry out the programs. Our recreation facilities are still not given the operational staff dollars that they need to operate as much as they could be used. And that's another area of, I think, possible investment too, particularly on evenings when we're looking for more options for our kids. And the last thing I'll say is we've been very intentional about providing culturally humble programming. It always amazes me which programs our youth are the most attracted to. When you do a cooking class, man, that often has like the longest waiting lists. And I think that, we are doing a good job, I think, of asking youth what it is, but they don't know what they don't know. And so, kind of asking them what they want, well, they don't know what to ask for, right, sometimes. And so we have to be more intentional about providing specific and concrete examples where we bring in some unique providers, some that may not even already be on our radar screen, so that we can provide a more holistic approach and bring in some of these small nonprofits that are serving an important population through programming that we don't even know exists. So just want to encourage those things. Thank you.
Thank you. And there are so many great programs in our schools already that have data sharing agreements, identify kids. I think that's just to add on. That's part of, we need to make sure that process exists as we're talking about quality and expanding programs. So, Council Member Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I love the presentation, and honestly, as you were talking, it's one of the reasons why it makes me so proud to live in Montgomery County, because of all these programs that we have. We need more, but we're doing, you need to turn off your mic, by the way. Yeah. Anyway, I have a couple questions. And on November 1st, I also had an event as a district council member, giving hours to Wheaton and Norwood High School students cleaning up a park in the Glenmont pool. And I had over 30 kids who showed up, and it was awesome. Anyway, so I felt like I had to say that since you talked about your event and you had a lot of people, so I had a lot of people. So on the Excel Beyond the Bell, which is also in middle school, and that program, Linkages to Learning, I know them as a mom. because I have kids who have used them. Is there data on how many kids, on capacity, meaning how many kids want to be on the program, but they can't because they're full? And I know I went through this. My kids go to Title I schools, and with linkages to learning, the list was so huge they couldn't meet all the kids. So I'm wondering if that continues and what's the number, because that will help us, especially when we go to the budget. We can say these are the many kids that they're still in need, because you didn't talk about that at all, none of you. So I need that number, and then especially in Title I schools. And the other thing I love about these programs, and I think it's important to highlight here, is that at least in Excel, actually both linkages to learning, elementary school, Excel, EBB, is open to any kid, at least in Title I schools, regardless of income level, which is great because you don't want the program to be seen as, oh, that program is only for low-income kids. No, it's for everybody. And that's important for kids to feel welcome. So I wanted to say that. It's a positive. And so the feels like I'm not getting to a question, but I actually did ask you one thing on the data. Do you have the data right now or no?
I don't have it with me. It's something we can certainly extract. It'd take a little bit of time, but we take registrations and we take wait lists. And some of what Councilmember Abenaz mentioned at the middle school level, young people certainly vote with their feet. So some courses are more popular than other courses, and so we try to make sure that if a student is waitlisted at the middle school, that I don't want to say force them, but strongly encourage them to try something that they normally wouldn't do, and to get exposure to, say, a cooking or some other type of fitness program. But we could certainly go back and look and figure out what the wait lists are for the current year.
Please do, because that's important when we talk about money. The other thing I wanted to share is that I am doing a youth town hall in my district. This is as a district council member. And I had my first meeting with my youth ambassadors last week at the Wheaton Library in Rec Center, of course. And I had kids from Einstein, Wheaton High School, Northwood, you name it. And so they were telling me about their ideas and challenges. And they mentioned two things that I need to mention here. One is that they were really upset, and these are kids who live in the Glenmont, Wheaton area, okay? They were upset that many of the big programs happening in the county, they happen either in Bethesda or in the Civic Center in downtown Silver Spring. You may think downtown Silver Spring is not far, but if you're a kid, middle or high school, and you live in Glenmont and you don't have parents to take you, it's far. Okay, and we have a beautiful library and rec center. We have a beautiful parking planning building with a huge space. There are places where we can do things in Wheaton and Glenmont. So I need to say that to you. Okay. Okay, so I just broke that in. And the other thing, transportation. And I know one of you, maybe it was you mentioned transportation in your slide briefly. Can you talk about it? Because what I heard from my ambassador youth ambassadors, what should I say? Youth ambassadors, is that if they have an after-school program, they don't have transportation, and even if they compete in other places, there's no transportation. In some schools, they do have the after-school bus that take them to certain places. That's the case on my kids' school. But in the wintertime, it's so late that sometimes parents don't want them to ride them or be in the class because it's so dark outside. So can you talk about your transportation program, and maybe if you already know what challenges you're facing that we can be discussing also in the budget?
Certainly. Transportation remains one of the number one barriers of any out-of-school time program, and it's certainly a struggle that we continue to have. We've been blessed that some programs do offer transportation. Our partnership with the Collaboration Council of Montgomery County Public Schools and programs like Excel Beyond the Bell have transportation dedicated to those programs, and they're successful largely because we've made transportation available and the program becomes more accessible. We hear the same thing from young people. We try to work with our colleagues over we're right on to look at what potential solutions might be. I know recently with community meetings in the Montgomery Village area, transportation came up as a big barrier. Councilmember Albanaz, you'd be pleased to know that we brought up this idea of a circulator bus again that maybe goes to certain entertainment hubs or locations such as community recreation centers, libraries, schools. We don't have good answers. I'll be quite candid about that. But where we can, I think the planning and the collaboration has allowed us to look at our large partners like Montgomery County Public Schools and go, what can we do to help each other with what we have already? And so a good example of where we overcame the transportation barriers with Montgomery County Recreation has a really great after-school program called Club Adventure in recreation centers. But transportation is certainly a barrier. We were able to collaborate with Montgomery County Public Schools where buses could stop at those locations that were in the attendance zone of community schools. I think that's there are areas like that where we can further collaborate, where buses are going on routes that are nearby facilities like recreation centers to make it more easy for a young person to go from a school location to a recreation center where they might be able to engage in additional after-school opportunities. So I think that's certainly something that we'll continue to explore as we get into strategic planning. But again, it remains our number one barrier to participation.
Yeah, and so, I'm working, hopefully it's going to happen, and just putting all my effort there to ensure that we have a circulator like we have in Bethesda. We have to have it in Wheaton in Glamont, so stay tuned on that one. It's gonna take me a while, but I'm on it, because you can't do it by yourself. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to let you know that 90% of the programs I talked about today do have a bus, both of them.
Okay.
And the non-instructional day activities that are planned are spread throughout the county, and so be on the lookout for the junior college day on January 29th. It's at Wheaton High School.
Ah, cool. Oh, I haven't been that day. Oh, that's gonna be. At what time?
Oh, let's talk later.
Okay, that's all right. And the last thing on the private and public partnership, that's a huge one, especially ensuring that we have more money from the private sector. We cannot fund it all, guys. Impossible. Even on Friday, I had received a phone call from this particular nonprofit that deals with youth at risk in the Wheaton Glenmont area, and they're in need of having funds on a certain project, and I'm like, let me help you connect with the private sector. Is this your what's it called? The collaboration council? Do you have like a list of private companies that are ready and able to?
So Collaboration Council does engage private funders on behalf of the county as the local management board, and we have worked in partnership in the past. I'm no longer there as out-of-school time program department. That's why I'm looking at Sydney, because I don't want to speak for the organization. But they have been designed to leverage public-private funds, which is, I think, a strength that the strategic work group has been looking to lean on, in addition to other groups like the Greater Washington Community Foundation, Economic Development Corp. We're bringing everybody's pocketbooks to the table.
All right, we'll follow up. Thank you so much, Sheila.
Thank you. Really good points. Councilmember Lukey.
Very quickly, first, I just want to say thank you for the SAT prep work. That's really amazing and really, really important. And Councilmember Albanaz was asking some questions or making the very good point, which is understanding how to best help and best engage people requires a holistic approach. And when he was talking about data, so these are vendors who are providing these programs, correct? And do the vendors maintain the records, or are they maintained by the school system?
We have a data sharing agreement.
So, but what I'm asking is, do the vendors have the data sharing agreement with MCPS to share their data, or is it the other way around? Because it has a legal significance. That's why I'm asking you that.
The data sharing agreement is for us to share limited data with them so that we can ensure registration and safety. That's it. It's just simply like emergency contact information and how you would register your child, so that if the vendor is because they're cleared to work alone with our students.
Right.
But if something should happen, that they could safely solve the problem.
Okay, so that you're sharing information for health and safety purposes only out, but that means that those are student education records of MCPS, correct?
They have some limited information. They don't have like the students' test scores, but
Correct, they would have no need for that, right, yeah, okay,
I
thank you.
will say, Councilmember, that when there is a grant or they're operating through the communities of public facilities as a vendor to provide in a focused community, we require them to report back in a survey as to how many students they
Gotcha.
serve, what the households look like in terms of were they multicultural, did they have any specific needs, like any disabilities, those kind of things. And that information is shared. The vendor acknowledges to the families that they're going to be collecting that information to support their further qualification for grants through us.
Right. So my point being that the vendor's information or anything that the vendor collects with the consent of the parents is the vendor's information and would not be subject to data sharing challenges under FERPA, but school-based records do. Because that is very helpful in potentially ironing out some of the other challenges we are having in understanding fuller, complete pictures of what needs to be done and where we have gaps. And my last question is we have a lot of teenagers who might not want to be engaged in programs per se, but maybe want to be engaged in program employment. Is there the option for that for our students who would be able to serve in their own communities, high school students who are of working age, to be able to work inside the programs that are providing the services?
So I'll go ahead and tackle that one. I'd mentioned earlier a TeamWorks program, which I really appreciate. It's a Learn to Work program. That program reaches out to young people who may not quite be ready to get other jobs on their own and allows them to not have to make hard choices between participating and being with their friends and being employed.
Right.
And so a lot of times programs like TeamWorks can operate inside of high school rec zones. So we have rec zone opportunities at Watkins Mill, Blair, Springbrook, Kennedy, Seneca Valley, and Magruder high schools currently. And so TeamWorks operates there, so young people can be employed at their school after school, which is really excellent.
Nice.
Also, we saw where young people are being employed through TeamWorks on days when school's not in session to support programs like Kids Day Out,
Right.
And other community programs. We have, if you ever go to a recreation special event, you'll see the notable green shirts, and they're at places like 4th of July and other community festivals and programs, and they offer great support to those programs and services. And then also, one of the value of having the young people employed there is that the community sees young people in a positive light, and I really appreciate that. In addition, we also offer what I would refer to as more traditional employment and recreation. And so whether it's being a after-school care provider in a club adventure or a camp counselor or a lifeguard, we're hiring lifeguards always. And
I
so,
might have one for you.
please. And so we're doing that. And I love to see us grow in that area of youth employment. Our TeamWorks program has been a tremendous success, and there's certainly room to continue to allow young people to have the opportunity, again, so they don't have to make the hard choices. And a lot of our young people are helping to contribute to their household expenses.
Great, thank you so much, thank you.
Yeah, and just on that point, and I'll have Councilman Rink close us out. I was at Richard Montgomery in one of our tours, and the students had created a program on their own to adopt a local elementary school and actually tutor and engage with those kids. That totally organic, had done it on their own, but it's certainly something we should be facilitating for. Obviously, there's a benefit on both sides, right? And so as part of the strategic planning process, imagine if you could build that in. There's students in high schools that would take their lunch break to do that, or do it after school, especially if we had transportation and it was formalized. We could pay them as well. There's a lot of different models. And so I just want to double tap that. I think that's something that's already organically happening at least one high school, because I talked to the students. but that we could actually do more of. I'm
Councilmember Jawanda, I just want to add really quickly, I'm going to take that idea back. We did have a spinoff of our TeamWorks program that is a volunteer operation. It's really getting started, because we know before young people are of employment age, they're looking for something, they need service hours, and it's a great way to engage them. So we'll certainly take that idea back.
And our seniors, the same thing, Councilman Robinson and I have been talking about for years, and others of trying to, how do we give this same transportation issue for our seniors who want to do the same thing and help out and have a lot to offer. So I think, as you're thinking, that all needs to be on the table. Councilmember May.
I'll be quick. Great points. Thank you for bringing up the crossover with employment opportunities. I had a student intern in the office who had been to the TeenWorks program and was very positive about it, and talked about how they think that the more spots that were available for that, they would be filled. So and that's a great idea also, Chair Jawanda. So. I just wanted to thank you all for the clear collaboration and good work that you all are doing with each other, for the way that you've involved the community in forming the process. That's very smart, and that's what we need. So much appreciation. It's great to see you all working so nicely together. It seems like very symbiotic relationships. Hopefully we'll be able to continue to fund them strategically moving forward, and I'm just looking forward to getting the further breakdowns of the data out of this that we're going to be seeing in February and beyond, to the other council members' points about being able to really dive deep and see who are we reaching and who are we not reaching, and where exactly is there need that we are not serving. I know that you all are gathering that data right now, so I'm looking forward to diving into that with you all and seeing that broken down by our equity emphasis areas and our districts and all of those different pieces that you're looking at. So good work. Thanks so much. And then in regards to the data, also, I think including those employment crossovers and those volunteer opportunities, it would be great to just have all of that information in one place, so that we're really answering the question, which students are being served and which are not, and where are the gaps. Thanks.
Absolutely, and that was one of the things that the OLO report pointed out, like where the availability, and many of us, I hated seeing my elementary school on there that still doesn't have access to after-school opportunities, for example. So I know you guys know this, but we're going to pull it all together. To Ms. Yao, so I heard February, you're going to have something to share. So as we head into the budget, and we'll work offline to make sure the county executive, and I have a check-in with him coming up soon, and many of us do. I'm going to bring this up, and I want to make sure on the staff level we have a check-in point, whether it's a committee session or not, we can decide later, but that we have a check-in point by February to see where you are, so that we're heading into the budget with our eyes wide open. Just want to thank you all. This is great work and more to do, and look forward to talking again soon. So with that, we will adjourn this joint committee. Thank you. Yes.
Transportation conditions throughout the day.